Hi, this is Tracey Tokuhama-Espinosa, and this is a video on how to do a Google Scholar search. Now, I'm making a presumption that many of you, most of you, all of you are pretty familiar with how to do a search. Google is just one of many search engines, but the search engine is fabulous because you can type in keywords and you'll end up with hundreds of thousands, if not millions. This one has 337 million results just for the word motivation, for example. So Google is great, but Google doesn't filter out things. It can get all kinds of rubbish, and anybody who feels like creating a web page can just put up anything they feel like. The good thing about a general Google search is that you can also find videos on the topic. You can just get general images of the topic, which are also useful. Get videos on the topic. You can get news that's related to that particular word. You can find books that are based on this idea. And if you go into the other searches, you can find if there was something related to an app or something on Google Maps that's related to that, you can also find it here. So Google's great, but it's really just overwhelming when it comes down to the amount of information that's there. So what we want to motivate you to do is to look at Google Scholar. And so Google Scholar you can find, once you're in Google, you can just go to Google Scholar. And it will tell you, okay, here's an option of Google Scholar page, okay? You can also go through their tips and their videos, which are very, very helpful. And I'll show you where we've linked some of those in our classroom. But just for the time being, if you're in Google Scholar, what you can do is once we put in that same word, for example, motivation, you'll end up having fewer results. Instead of 337 million, you'll just have 3 million. Okay, well, that's better. But Google gives you a lot of ways that you can reduce your search drastically. And one of the key things that many of you already know as great researchers is that using the right keywords is extremely important in finding the right kind of information or narrowing down your search. So if you know the name of an author that you're interested in, or if you know a certain time period, or if you can combine your keywords, for example, if we have young children and we have a concern for mathematics, for example, if we put in all these words, we will again reduce our search then from now these 3 million, now we only have 458,000 searches. And if I really just want the most up-to-date information, I can choose a custom range. I can just say anything just from 2000 or anything just in the past 2 years, right? So instead of having 458,000 results, now I only have 17,000 results in this sense. Okay, so we can slowly reduce our search by creating or coming up with better keywords. And this is really, really important to think and expand your vocabulary as you consider this. Am I really considering motivation in young children in mathematics, or am I really worried about anxiety? It's the opposite. They're not motivated. It's not that they're motivated, they're actually freaked out about math, right? So if I change my word a little bit more tightly, I'll get fewer results and more precise for what I'm looking at, okay? So next thing that's really great about Google Scholar is that you'll have a listing here, and not all entries will have this, but if you have an entry on the right-hand side, it means that this document actually exists for you to download and use, okay? So you'll be able to open this and you'll have the full article there for you to read. In the event that it says find it at Harvard, it's because you have already programmed into Google that you're a Harvard student, so that you have access to the Harvard Library. So hopefully you all are very aware and have watched our intro video in the course introduction that shows you all the resources that are available through Harvard. But for the most part, this means that most of these articles are still available to you free, so long as you access them through the Harvard platform. And to set this up, if you haven't already done this, you'll see that there's a little arrow here on the side where you can find settings. So once you're in Google Scholar, you go to settings, and in settings you'll see that there's something that says library links, okay? So you click on library links and you indicate that you want the Harvard University Library. So I have the Harvard University links. These are the two that they recommend, and these are the suggestions they give me. So I click on these two, and then I save these things. So in my settings, it will always tell me I can get this article through the Harvard Library, usually for free. So try and make sure you set up your settings as you do this. This is going to be very important. The third great thing that I want you to know about Google Scholar is that many of you have already watched the APA video, and you know that we need all of your submissions to be in APA format, and this includes your citations that you use within the discussion boards, for example, as well as the things that you put into your semester project. One thing that Google Scholar helps you with is sorting out these different formats. So for example, if I'm interested in this particular, let's see, what do we like? Integrational effects of parents' math anxiety on children's math achievement and anxiety. Oh, that's pretty interesting, okay? So I want to cite this, all right? One way I can do it is I can go into the document, right? And I can open up that whole thing and I can look at the article itself and I can see, here are the author's names and here's the title of the article and here's the publication source. I can do all that by hand and that usually takes quite a long time. Or I just look at my Google Scholar and I look here and it says Cite. And I click on Cite and then I see here's the one for APA. So then I can click on that, I just save it, I do a copy of that, right? And then I can paste it into the documents that I'm using. If you are already using something like Mendeley, if you're using EndNote or other things like that, you can also paste it into a Word document in that format. But if you have, for example, our Word template that we've been using all the time, you can just go and you can begin to, sort over on top of these references here, you can put in the references that you're coming up with. Now, since I just pasted it in and it was out of format, then you'll have to go through. I have to go to the format button, I have to go to the styles that are here, I have to say I'm going to modify that style, and then I have to go into the paragraph. When I'm in the paragraph form, I realize that there's either you have no formatting or you have the first line, which means it indents slightly, or you have what's called hanging indent in English or Francesa in Spanish. You put that in, and then I also want to have a space underneath each of my entries as references. So I just put that in, I say accept, accept, accept. So now this reference now looks like it should look, okay? Now here's the kicker though. Google Scholar is amazing, but it's not always perfect. So you might find that in some of these things you're going to have an error. On this one, I don't have any errors, which is pretty cool. So this one is just fine. But if I go back to Google Scholar and I say, okay, I want another article here. Let's say I want to look at the relationship between math anxiety and math performance, okay? So if I cite this and I click on this, I can already see there's an error here because articles in APA format, or in a special format that you might recall, indicate the title of the journal, the series number, the number, and then the page numbers, right? Well, if you notice here, the titles of journals have all of the keywords are capitalized. So if I just paste in the one that we just came up with, we'll see that this one, unfortunately, the one that we just pasted in, you'll see that Google Scholar is amazing, but it's not perfect, okay? Frontiers in Psychology, since this is the name of the journal, these have to be in capital letters, and this is something I have to correct manually. Having said that, it saves us all the time in the world of just entering the author and all the names and all the rest of it in the name of the journal. But it's a small change, but you'll have to be aware of that sometimes these are not perfect APA format. They are really good. They're a lot better than having to do it by hand, but sometimes there's errors. This one, no error at all, for example. This is perfect. We have the name of the journal that begins with a capital. We have the series number, and we have the page number. Everything looks lined up perfectly. So that one isn't a problem, but you may find them along the way. So always remember, you're going to have to look for the APA format. And if you're curious, MLA is another style, Chicago's another style, Harvard's another style, Vancouver's another style, and you see they're all slightly different. Make sure you always click the APA one. In general, this is a great tool to use. The last two fun things about Google Scholar are that you can create, if you want, this is kind of like an infinite cloud here, but the link, if you'd like to save an article, for example, to read it later, to go back later, you just click on it, right? And when you're in Google Scholar, if you look at your library, so this is the importance of caregiver-child interactions, great. So if I go to my library, that's actually the last thing that was saved here, okay? So every time I push save, you'd be able to look and see all the things that you've listed there. So if you don't have time to go into them or to look at them or to save the citations, for example, you can create your own library by just saying save instead of cite, okay? So it says that this one has been saved, it's already in my library. And the last thing is that you can choose whether or not you want specific dates, as we mentioned before, or you can say, no, just give it to me by relevance. What is the most relevant title based on the keywords I've put in here? So by anxiety, young children, and mathematics. And by the way, another way to limit your search is to make sure that you have isolated these words. So it's not young anxiety or anxiety young. It's really the young children I want together, right? And it's mathematics, on its own, or I can write math anxiety or whatever. I can put those two together. But by putting them in quotation marks, it makes sure that those groups of words are together. So young children will always come up together in this sense, okay? So you can Limit, you can just sort by relevance so long as you have excellent keywords. So, and you have to think a lot about what synonyms for different words that you might have, or what is really the information you're looking for. If you just say, I'm interested in good teaching, you're going to get a gazillion articles and it's not going to be helpful at all. So you have to really start to hone in on what it is that you want to know. And that's one of the very, very first questions you have to ask yourself as you're doing research is, what is it that I'm trying to find out? Okay, one last thing. I almost forgot to tell you, one of the most fun things about Google Scholar is that you can create an alert, which means that if you've come across the right combination of words, things that you really, this is it, I'm finding all kinds of wonderful articles, I really like this, then you should create an alert. You create an alert here by simply saying, this is where I want the email to go, and you can create several alerts, right? For example, I have an alert for mind-brain education, or whenever somebody cites me, or when the word educational neuroscience comes up, I've created an alert for that, right? So by creating an alert, it means that anytime a new article gets published using those words, you get an email. And it reminds you, it says, oh, there's an alert that's come up. And I see, and I'll get, for example, in my inbox, it'll say Google Scholar alerts for these words, something new just came out. And I'll click on it. And here are all the things that came out with that particular combination of words that I came up with, okay? So by creating an alert in Google Scholar, you're able to stay abreast of really the most up-to-date information in your field. So as you do research for this class, I would like you to really try to maximize the potential that we have, or leverage this technology within Google Scholar, as well as all of the wonderful resources that you have available to you at the university. Do take the time to do their tutorials as well, to go through the information that exists within the Harvard libraries so that you have the most access to the best information possible. So if you're back in the Canvas classroom, remember there's this section for resources, right? If you click on those resources, some other things that are there to help you, there's general references for information, but there's also a section on library research. And this is information about the Harvard libraries, the home section there, database cross-search, how to find journals there, and some basic research guides that Harvard has provided here. Another wonderful thing to be aware of now that you're Harvard students is that we do have somebody starting last year. Harvard has now dedicated a librarian solely to the students who are taking courses 100% online. So that person is available to us, to you, to facilitate your search. If you're saying, I just can't find this article, or I can only find it and somebody's asking me to pay $49 for it, is there any way I can get this for my research? They will help you find the best way possible to get the information you need to do the best analysis possible for your work in this class. So please take advantage of all the resources that we have available, including the general Google Scholar, but also the resources we have at Harvard. Thanks so much. Looking forward to working with you in class.